Good evening.
Hello.
Episode 1 of Warren and Melissa on the couch.
It's pretty cool. Something
Yeah,
new.
something new, very new. And this evening we've got Andrew Savage, the man behind Stoke. Well, there's actually two Andrews, but we have the one with us tonight. And we just wanted to have a chat to him. I think what a lot of people don't know is who you are and how you're involved in cycling. I think we've been very fortunate to have met you guys and got to know you on a different level, not just from a shop point of view. We got to ride together and we know a little bit about your lives. And I think a lot of people out there don't know who you are. And I thought it's a great opportunity not to give all the secrets away, but just just a tiny bit, but just so that we can, like, people know you are, that they a bit more familiar with who you are when they walk into the shop. And then we also wanted to chat a little bit about Cape Town trails. A lot of people kind of migrate to the trail centers, so to speak, the Contemans and Bloemendals and Wilkrals, but they kind of forget that there's quite a bit to ride in the city center. And
it is.
Who better to ask than the man who's involved in all of it?
Yeah, so, one of those things that you take on, not knowing what you're taking on.
There we go. I mean, look, we all have our crosses to bear, as they say. So yeah, thank you for coming on and joining us. We really, really appreciate it. Something new for us, so we're going to see how this goes. I think there are so many prominent people in the cycling industry who are making a difference and are doing good things, and we just want to highlight those people and just draw some attention to them. We're going to have some really cool people coming up, and you are the first. But I think to kick it off,
thank you.
Tell people a little bit about who you are. I mean, I know who is Andrew. I know who Andrew is. I don't know if the listeners know who Andrew is.
I mean, there's two parts, I suppose. There's many parts, but the two parts is, this is the one part, the bike industry and Stoke, which started about 2013. It was looking for a space in the bike industry where we wanted to create something that hadn't been done before, but didn't have the bucks to play in the big leagues with stock and what stuff. I landed up going on a suspension course because I probably actually needed to service my suspension at the time.
Sorry to break your word, but I mean, so these are things you can go on a course? I mean, you could?
Yeah, you could back then. There was a private individual, Johan, who was doing suspension stuff at the time. Okay. Very much DIY, or let me rephrase it, not really DIY, but sort of more for the end consumer level.
Okay.
There were obviously the agents who were servicing stuff, but they were servicing stuff on a national level, and mountain biking was growing at such a rate that they probably couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And we chatted with a good mate who was in the bike industry at the time, and we were kind of trying to figure out where we were at. I went on a course because it interested me, and then had to explain the course to Drew because he didn't go on the course and realized he was a lot cleverer than I am at that stuff. And then we kind of found our niche in a way. Like,
that's amazing.
That was the space, and we were very lucky at the time, I think. It was easier to get in.
Yeah.
Technology wasn't as advanced as it is now. There was only a couple major brands. I mean, you had Fox RockShox, Manitou, and then a couple of outliers, which have probably fallen away by now.
Yeah.
So we focused on Fox and RockShox because we could get parts. And we could get some training. It was very much dark art, like no manuals, apart from whatever somebody had figured out by taking it apart and putting it back together and again.
I mean, it's not like you could go onto YouTube and go look at a breakdown or something.
The manufacturers now are fantastic. Like, you really can go to just about everybody's website, and there's a service page or support page and a breakdown on, let's call it 80% of their work.
Yes.
The earlier stuff is obviously, it's ingrained in Drew's head.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much in there. I wish I could print it out.
I'm actually too scared to know what happens in his head.
True story. But there's
But
a lot
somewhere
of
in there's some suspension bits.
Fox tell us. Let's look at that.
Yeah.
Fox tell us, how do you rebuild that air spring? The air spring will come apart as it does, but it'll pretty much fill the length of this couch in bits, like as you lay it out in sequence.
Yeah.
Like it's in there, he knows it.
It's crazy.
Which is kind of cool. And there's a couple of the older things where himself, maybe Steve Bowman from Fox in South Africa, maybe one or two other guys that have taken things apart would kind of know what's actually happening. But since then, a lot of good manuals, a lot of stuff to reference, and I'd say it loosely, anybody can kind of do the stuff at home if you have the right stuff.
I suppose, okay, so you say that. I am technically minded, grew up building Lego.
You're 100% of the way there.
There we go. I mean, that's all I need, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So I enjoy taking things apart and I enjoy putting it back together. It's a good challenge for me. I think what scares me when it comes to these kind of things, and I'm probably speaking for a lot of people out there, is that I'm scared that when we go down a mountain at stupid speeds like we do, or some of us do, I need to know that it's going to work. So from that point of view, I don't mind playing, but I know that there are repercussions. And when you start messing with things that impact your life, I think I'm going to steer away from those kind of things.
So, I mean, generally on a fork, as long as the foot nuts are secure, so the lowers and the uppers don't come apart, and as long as the shock damper body is attached to the rest of the stuff inside, like, you're good. Like, yes, if something breaks, it'll break internally.
Yes.
And there'll be damage.
Look, I mean, I've heard things with some interesting sounds. So yeah, it doesn't make me feel comfortable.
There's some of those wonderful photos of early suspension in like the early 2000s, of like a guy going down a downhill, and you can see like the fork upper and lower is separated with oil spraying everywhere.
Dude, you see, those are the kind of things that scare me. It's I always have this fear in my head, like you're going down like a revised or like an SS7 at Contemans, and it's rocky and it's fast, and you pull the brakes and there's nothing. Yeah. And I think that combined with a suspension that's not working, it blows my mind.
A well-maintained bike is a safe rider in a way.
I suppose, yeah, if you think about that.
I mean, the trick stuff we have on our bikes now.
Yeah.
I mean, even the suspension and brakes at a base level bike now is so good.
Well, I think
compared to the shit we rode in, but the stuff we rode in the 90s was terrible.
Dude, I'm fortunate. I came on, like, I had a BMX when I was growing up, as most kids did. Never really got into anything with gears. It was fun on a BMX. It was great.
Cheaper.
It was cheaper. It's all our parents could afford at the time. And I only got into the mountain biking much later. So a lot of my mates now who kind of like you guys who have been riding through the 90s, some of the stories.
Some of the
bikes.
Look, some of the bikes are pretty cool. Josh Bender's Apocalypse, 300 miles of travel, launching himself fearlessly downhill. It's pretty rad in the early 2000s. There wouldn't be a ride where you either phoned your girlfriend, or actually there weren't phones, so you arrived home late, you had like 2 spare tubes because you'd had 2 punches. Or like you'd have to fix your bike between Saturday and Sunday because something had come apart. I mean, now, go for a ride on Wednesday or Thursday evening, put the bike away, pick it up on Saturday morning, go ride again, and then ride again on Sunday.
Yeah.
And
just check your tire pressure and off you go.
Forget sometimes. And you're good.
Yeah.
Tubeless tires are great. No longer have an excuse for being late because you don't get punches anymore.
Yeah, true story.
Yeah. Anyway,
but just while we're on the suspension thing, I think while we got one of the suspension gurus in Cape Town sitting on our couch, if you just had to...
Gurus are loose term.
We'll throw it around every now and then. If you just had to explain in a very brief term what the most important things to set up your suspension are, like you've just bought a bike, be it at a bike shop, online, bike hub, whatever it may
Yep.
be. You get it, you're super excited, you want to go ride the trails.
Second-hand bike. Never owned it before. Bought it from a guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there we go. You want to set it up, you want to give a quick thing, a quick check over, do a quick setup, baseline setup. What does that entail?
Essentially, you want to climb on the bike in a sort of a flat plane, climb on and check the sag.
Okay.
So how much does the suspension sink into its travel? Generally, if the bike's relatively well maintained, there'll be a little indicator O-ring, or if it hasn't, maybe the guy's put a zip tie on.
Yes.
But essentially,
I've done that.
look,
It is what it is.
back in the day.
Yeah.
But you climb on, you check the sag. Cross-country bike, 20-25% of the stroke. Trail bike, 30%. Downhill bike, yeah, you're probably looking at about 30 as a good starting point.
Yes.
And that's how much the suspension settles into its stroke. Or
So
its sag
gently
point.
get onto your bike and
Climb
see.
on, reset it, but then gently get off.
Gently get off.
Then measure. So, for instance, if you look at an old 200 by 57 shock, so 57 mils is the stroke, 17 millimeters settlement is about 30%.
Okay.
Obviously, the short travel cross-country bikes, it's less
Okay.
because
Yeah.
just less
Yes.
stroke.
Less stroke. Yeah.
When you start messing with the kinematics of the bike in terms of I wanted to do this on the rear and this on the front, that's when you start altering from your standard percentages.
Yeah.
But that's your baseline. You kind of get on, check it out, make sure that the settings are more or less right. All the major manufacturers have got relatively good setup charts now. And that's your starting point.
Okay.
Once you start getting into the realms of compression and all that, gets a bit more serious.
Yeah.
Rebound's the next one. If we're keeping the suspension very basic,
Yeah.
check the rebound. Make sure that it's not going to kick you over the bars or act like a pogo stick in the front and then unsettle the bike and it'll start wandering.
Yeah.
So, and also similarly, don't make it too slow. So if it's really slow to come back, then speed it up a little bit.
Okay.
And you're going to find your comfort zone.
Okay.
And then once you start getting into the more advanced stuff, then you're starting to look at compression or multiple compression, multiple rebound, air pressure, spring rate, volume spaces.
Yeah. Then
It gets real quick.
I was going to say it's actually like a rabbit hole. So I've watched many a Jordi Cortez video.
Great videos.
And if the listeners out there don't know who Jordi is, please go Google him.
Yeah,
And
Fox dialed.
Fox dialed.
So
Unfortunately,
sad to not see them having it this year. It's
dude, I am
a pity.
livid.
Oh.
I about 3 days before the World Cup happened this past weekend, and I said to Melissa, something's missing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what Jordi and the team's up to. I said, it's not that I don't care about the riders. Like they were the World Cup, or they are the World Cup. We just don't see it anymore.
Completely different insight into it from a different angle, which
Yeah.
is always great.
And I just loved how the dynamic. I mean, he made Teo famous last year.
He did.
And there's a small chance that we're going to try and get Teo onto this and just understand the dynamic between him and Jordi's relationship, which is an interesting thing on its own.
I think it's not necessarily just for Teo, but for the riders. It's what we see is quite a loose, quite a relaxed relationship, which is quite nice. I think the guys have got to trust him quite a lot. I think in the back end of it all, it's pretty serious. And
I would imagine
extreme
so.
trust.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to distill from the rider what they're trying to explain, and then try and give them either direction or
It's
confidence.
a special skill.
It is.
Yeah.
There was a fantastic piece of video with that. It was a year ago. Somebody chirped, "Why don't you just click it one click forwards and one click back, and just tell him it's changed, and he'll go right on." Yeah. And he was like, "But that's just going to break his trust."
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's trust, knowing that information you receive is correct, and that it's going to yield a positive result for the rider.
Yeah.
And I mean, we try and do that in our shop. I
Well,
know
I was
many
actually going to
other
say
bike
that
shops
now.
do the
Yes.
same.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a couple of shops that do bike setup and suspension setup with their customers. It's just that you've got to try and understand what the guy's asking about, and then set him up to the best of the information that you receive, and we always say to the guy, like, hey, if there's a problem, phone. If you are happy, let us know. It means we've done something right. If you have a concern, come back. Let's sort it out.
But I think that's what sets you guys apart. And this is not me bad mouthing any other bike shop. I think it's just what sets you guys apart is that you are readily available, and I'm not saying after hours, but you're just readily available for the good and the bad. And I think that's what gives Melissa and I peace of mind at the end of the day.
We try.
Yeah.
We do try.
Look, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect all the time. Don't get me wrong.
It can't be. We're human.
Yeah.
And again, one of the things that we'll say to somebody in the shop, we are human.
Yeah.
We're going to make a mistake every now and again.
Yes.
But we try and back it up.
Yeah.
So come in and we'll fix the problem, and we'll get it right.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that philosophy can be transferred into a multiple of decisions and businesses.
Yeah.
Talking about businesses, it's not the only business that I'm involved in.
Yes.
But again,
sorry. Let's just
no. We're not
sidetrack.
Hang on. It's not that. It's a way of sort of just offering the best possible service to your client, just in terms of we got it wrong, we'll fix it. Or similarly, thank you, you got it right.
Yeah.
This is awesome, which makes us feel great, and then we can just keep going.
Well, I was going to say, it keeps you motivated. Like
Totally.
anything, keeps you ticking over.
Yeah, we like bikes. We like watching people ride their bikes and be stoked on it. We dig fixing them. Love building bikes, like custom builds. I dig that.
There's a show on YouTube. What's it?
Dream Builds.
Dream Builds. G Miller, I think that's his name.
Can sit and watch those for hours
all day long. It's just Dream Build, guys. If you ever want to just have some bike porn, that's as good as it gets there.
No, he does some pretty cool stuff, and it's been wonderful watching that show progress over the years, starting off like a very sort of basic setup with really slick builds and wonderful bikes. And where it is now, just doing some really special stuff.
Exclusive, unbelievable stuff. But keeping on the theme of trust, which is not something we planned, but it's really cool. We trusted you to take us onto some trails that we've never ridden before. And it is something that was important for me to chat about tonight, which is Table Mountain trails.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't... It's not that they don't know. I think people know that there are trails, but it's the generic trails. So it's the loop on Table Mountain. It's the King's Blockhouse. It's
not very well documented. I mean, there is some documentation out there on obviously on the legal trails, and there's a plethora of just different trails all over the place, not just Table Mountain, the whole way down the South Peninsula.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that are riding trails and horse trails and walking trails.
Yeah.
And it gets quite blurred in terms of who uses what.
Yeah.
But in terms of Table Mountain, it's not radically well documented. There's Table Mountain bikers who have a great website in terms of having some of the trails on there. The wonderful Dan Dobinson, who was involved with Ilsel Enduro and getting sort of Enduro into the Western Cape quite heavily a couple of years ago.
Joe's brother.
Correct.
Yes.
He did a wonderful artwork series around 2020 in terms of doing these posters of various trails, and you could order them during COVID time.
It's amazing.
But it also documented a couple of them. But essentially, Table Mountain has got a strange relationship with trail building in terms of the legalities and sandparks.
I think, this is something I wanted to chat about. We've spoken about it extensively. I've spoken to Dale about it.
Yes.
And there's some interesting, there's an interesting relationship between the two parties.
Yeah. So it's become over the years, it's been quite rocky. Let's not beat about the bush. It's been a rocky process. There's been a big sort of push around 2016, I think, in terms of Takai and the major fire and trail rebuilding, and then an EMP, an environmental management plan that went out for the Greater Table Mountain area. And that kind of sets the rules of what you can and can't do, the processes, and how you go about applying for a trail or making an existing trail legal or maintaining it and what have you. So that EMP has been around for many years, and that's kind of what we operate around. It allows a bit of leeway in certain light in terms of maintenance. It can be quite hamstringing in a way for new trails.
So you can't, I mean, the process is not you just go build a trail and then apply for it to become legal.
It would be lovely if that was, but I think there'd be so many trails. No, essentially you would actually put the application in proposing what to do. It would be reviewed by Sandparks, City of Cape Town, and ultimately go through a review process, which does take a while. Does it meet the requirements of the EMP? Yes, no. We're talking very broad strokes here.
Yes.
And then either gets implemented or refused.
Okay.
And that's where it's at.
Unfortunately, at the moment, more refusals than...
Yeah, look...
More
again,
no's than yeses.
But between the time of the main mountain bike committee being put together and the EMP put in place and all that part of the rocky road and the frustration, I think mountain bike community in one light they kind of got a bit frustrated and let it go a little stagnant. So it didn't stay on top of the communication. Yeah. And similarly, Sandparks, that government organization, it doesn't change staff, it changes position. So as people get promoted and what have you, so you're not necessarily dealing with the same person the whole time, which makes it tricky. So you don't have that email thread with everybody, or the right person that you're chatting to. Anyway, so we're at now a point where we are trying to sort of rekindle that discussion with Sandparks, and look at what's existing. What can we maintain? Everybody knows the Glen, heavily damaged trail.
Yes. Yeah.
We've talking to them about a proposal to try and reinstate what's there, but potentially it's too damaged.
Yeah. I mean, we went down there just after the damage. We took a walk down, and it's buggered. It's not in a great state at the moment.
There's also a potential proposal to try and look at rerouting somehow, to just allow it to flow, but better get away from the water course that generally causes the damage. We're in process with trying to regularize a lot of the stuff that's on Signal Hill. Pat's Track, that's been on the EMP and an approved mountain bike trail for many, many years. So it's not
multi-use?
Yeah, completely. Every trail on Table Mountain is multi-use.
Okay.
It has to be.
Okay.
And I don't, apart from the Glen, I don't disagree with that. The Glen is tricky because it's a descending trail and you have people walking up it. So you imagine somebody walking up a downhill course on race day. It's not a safe environment. But anyway, we're given use of the trail. It is multi-use.
Right, within your...
Yeah, and don't be a dick.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you're going to have an altercation with somebody. Hopefully it's nothing more than a frustration or some words, and you can find a middle ground and move on. Yeah. It's just when mountain bikes and speed and people walking up a hill and dogs. Yeah. It's not a good combo.
I was going to say yes. Yeah.
But we've been afforded these multi-use trails, so enjoy them. Be a good human and enjoy it for what it is. Anyway, and then there's a bunch of other trails on sort of around the King's Blockhouse area, Rhodes Memorial. Some of them have been approved. Some of them are old hiking trails. Some of them are just random animal tracks that guys have ridden down for the last 20 years, like Epic Single Track. Yeah. That was an old hiking trail in early 90s, early 2000s. Very illegal, but people were riding them back then. Yeah. And that's
I
obviously
suppose there wasn't much at the time,
no.
and that was what you had, so it's what you rode.
That was a gnarly trail, man.
Yeah.
That was rough and steep and scary.
Yeah.
It didn't have any of the swales that are in it now to slow you
Yes,
down,
yeah.
or the chicane in the middle.
Yes, yeah.
It was just a flat out run. It was great. And then obviously with the Cape Epic, who has pulled a massive amount of sort of scene, getting the scene, let's call it that.
Yeah.
They've pulled a massive amount of revenue in and got the trail legalized and fixed up as part of the prologue for many
Yes,
years.
yeah.
So that's been a positive driver. And then since then, I think Sandparks is kind of like, well, they're seeing that the trails are getting more heavily used, especially after 2020.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff on the mountain that guys want to ride, or they want to build, or they want to maintain.
Look, we went down it with you, and my goodness, we had a blast.
So that
I mean,
that trail that we rode, Granite Trail, Slick Rock, it's old. That trail's 20 years old. Hasn't changed much in the year apart from fallen material on it. It's rock essentially.
So good.
Yeah, it's been around for yonks.
So you've got that side of the mountain, so we call it the cableway side of the mountain. You've got some granite, you've got some rocks. And then we did venture across onto Signal Hill and rode some of the legal trails that side.
Yes.
Also an absolute rush, loads of speed. It's just awesome. And where do I struggle to think where people go to find out about this, because I didn't, or Melissa and I didn't have any idea that those trails even existed.
So a lot of the stuff will be on Table Mountain Bikers' website. A lot of the stuff will be documented by Sandparks. But in terms of the best way to find trails to go ride is just find a local bike shop.
Yeah.
Come to Stoke, go to Revolution, go to East City, go to Gear Change. All of those bike shops, and there are quite a number of others, have all kind of at some point put their hand in the pot and like given a bit of cash towards maintenance or the drive to fix the glen or what have you. And most of the guys would be like, okay, if you're in this area, aim for sort of these trails. They'll give you a basic rundown. But in terms of the documentation of it, there's not actually a lot.
Yeah,
it's another
crazy.
project.
Yes,
to take on is that documentation.
Well, I mean that and also permits. Other than people who, like Melissa and I, have gone out and we've purchased an activity permit, which gives us access for 12 calendar month or calendar year, and we can then go on and use the mountain bike trails. If you don't buy one of those, it's so hard to get.
It is
a day permit because you have to drive to Tokai and buy it there.
Yes.
They're not open during the week or on the weekend. They're only open during the week and they close at 4. And then, so you got to get there during work, buy permits to ride on a weekend, and it just makes it.
The process needs a bit of refinement.
Yeah.
You used to be able to buy activity permits of a certain kind at Kirstenbosch many years ago.
Yeah. And then I think it was Love Cape Town, the Cape Town Berg Street. That's the one. Yes,
Berg and Castle.
Yeah, that's closed down.
Yeah, that's always
now.
where we used to go and buy our annual permits. It's become pretty tricky. 2020 didn't really help the process either. But the process needs some refinement.
Okay, cool.
But there's lots to ride on the mountain.
But this is what I was going to say now. Would you be opposed if we had to arrange a ride? And
no, not at all. I'd love to show people the trails. I
feel it's this hidden gem in Cape Town.
It is. There's Cape Town in general. If we don't look at any of the wonderful trail centers that we have, and we have a lot. We've got so much choice in this town.
Yeah, we are spoiled,
within an hour to an hour and a half drive. I mean, you can go ride a different venue for, let's say, every weekend for 3 months.
Yeah,
and you'll touch a different venue.
Yeah.
There's so I've lost my train of thought now. Where was I?
No worries. Trails in Cape Town.
Oh, trails in Cape Town. That's right. So excluding all the trail centers.
Yeah.
The city of Cape Town is quite a level that you've got to start at. It's not to say that you can't be a novice.
Yeah.
You can. It's just it limits what you can ride,
Yeah.
and you've got to get comfortable with a little bit of speed, and you've got to get comfortable with a little bit of technical trail quite early on in your riding career. So let's say you were starting brand new, never ridden a bike before. You rode a bike when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So you'd go ride Tafelberg Road, just tar road, beautiful views, quite undulating.
Yeah.
Bit of climbing, bit of descending.
Yeah.
There's a bit of dirt at the end. And then from there, you would say ride to the King's Blockhouse, which is along the same road, but dirt road with a big descent and a big climb.
Yeah.
You know, now you have fitness and a bit of a rough road to deal with.
Yeah.
So that skill level and that fitness suddenly jumps. You don't go from like a novice to beginner. You kind of go from novice to intermediate.
Okay.
And that's kind of where Cape Town trails are. I'm not saying that people should be scared of them. There's a little bit for everyone. If you're not comfortable, you can always just
There's
walk,
something else.
and you can walk over a piece
Yeah.
or have a look and say, yeah, I'm keen, or no.
And I think we you say that now. I had an experience like that on the Missing Link. So
Yes.
I think Melissa and I had wanted to ride it for a long time, and we chose to ride it. Maybe not the right time. It was after some really big storms in Cape Town. A lot of it had washed away.
Pretty rough.
And it felt like we were in some rocklands somewhere, and it was just, for our skill level, it was near impossible to ride.
Yeah.
And then we popped down to SJ at Revolution, and he's like, this trail's running the best it's ever run in its life. It's amazing. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
So the Missing Link is it's a phenomenal trail in terms of what it can give visitors. That sunset view in summertime, riding that trail or running the trail, walking with family or the dog, it's special. The material that trail is made out of is a loose collection of coffee clip, which is this little round rocks which move, and decomposed granite, which is this wonderful stuff that you can cut and shape, but it leaves like this kitty litter across the top.
You see, and it's super loose.
It's super loose.
Yeah.
It needs water. It loves water. They drain well. You can ride them all year round. Summertime, it gets hot, really, really slippery, and quite sandy.
Yeah.
So there is a massive drive at present with Miles Kelsey from Bike Network raising cash, along with I think Table Mountain Bike is also getting involved. Basically, just pushing a bunch of cash into that trail. There's some fantastic private benefactors that have also donated to that trail over the years to get it going and keep it maintained. But right now, there's a big push to trying to get it cleaned up and running well again, because it does get hammered by the weather.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, it's not just the weather. I mean, we passed about 35,000 dogs
I can believe that
morning.
It's heavily used.
Yeah.
And it's
which
well
is
used
fantastic,
and
though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. And if you look at, like you say, the views, it's
They're
just
special.
phenomenal.
That was special.
So you've got that. You've got there's so much to do in Cape Town. I think this is probably a good time to wrap it up. First podcast on a real high.
We only had 2013 at the start of Stoke. We've got a whole story to go.
There we go. I think we're definitely going to have to get you back.
Yeah.
But it was important for people to understand who you guys are and a little bit about your work ethics, and it's what attracted us to you guys, and also now your knowledge of some of the Cape Town trails. So we'll have to arrange that ride, and we will. Melissa and I are doing some, as we do our group rides every year. This will obviously be one of them now.
Yeah, we have one on Table Mountain.
Yeah, we can do one on Table Mountain and just get people to experience the awesomeness of the other side of Cape Town. I mean, we've always end up in Tygerberg or Jonkershoek or Stellenbosch, and these are meccas for mountain biking, yes, but we've also got the Cape Town trails.
Yeah, riding in the city it's in a way, it's quite a European way of going for a bike ride.
Yeah.
Because you ride up, you do a trail, you pop down to the city, you have a coffee at a coffee shop, stay there for 30 minutes, whatever, and hop back on your bike, climb back up again, go do another piece of trail. You know,
Is that how they do it?
you can pop into town, have lunch, go home, go back up, ride some more, pop in town for a beer, or go to Sunset down at the sea. It's a lovely way of experiencing the
Yeah.
city. And yeah,
Makes me want to get on my bike and ride.
I mean,
Is
only
it
half a
too
state.
late?
Let's go. Got lights.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Only
Andrew,
pleasure.
for joining for episode 1. I mean, it's weird. I've always like these podcasts. It's an interesting thing because we want our listeners to be engaged and find it interesting, and we don't want to go on forever. But you sit in a situation like this, and there's just so much. You like a wealth of information, and we just
There's
like,
lots of.
how do you get to pick your brain with 30 or 40 minutes?
I think there's going to
crazy.
be quite a couple of people that you'll have on your podcast
Yeah.
where there's lots of info out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, podcasts can go on for hours
Yeah.
if need be.
But we can get you back. I think that's the nice
Yeah.
thing. I mean, we've got, beers and pizza? We'll
I
have to change the menu up for next time, but we'll keep the beers.
Keep the beers. Always keep the beers.
Always keep the beers. And I think next time we'll have Drew on as well.
Yes.
And I think that's going to change the dynamic of this conversation substantially. Is,
More technical base. There's lots of info in that cranium
Yeah.
that needs to be imparted to the world.
And we also want to know what he thought of Africa Burn.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you loved it.
But anyway, thank you so much for
pleasure.
joining us. Thank you to the listeners for joining for episode 1. And
One of many.
one of many. We'll see you guys. Well, no, we'll chat to you soon.
Chat to you soon. See you soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Ciao.